Healing was the warm-up. This is the main fucking event. Welcome to Go Regulate Yourself, the unapologetic, unfiltered love letter you didn't know you needed. This is where mental health meets real life, where growth gets gritty, and where we stop pretending healing makes us saints. Think of it like therapy with tequila shots and a side of tough love. In this space, we're learning how to take responsibility for our shit, face the chaos of life, and become the best version of who we are. So if you're ready for your weekly "what the fuck am I doing" moment, let's dive in. Hello, Reg Babe, and welcome back to another episode on the Go Regulate Yourself podcast. My name is Brianne, I am your host, and today we are chatting about quantum leaps. Now, I recently released an article on the 30-something Bible called "She Has It All and I Hate Her For It." And I had one single line within this article that really struck a chord with a lot of people and resulted in a lot of you hopping into my inbox to chat with me about what this specifically means. And after a few conversations, I thought, what a great topic to bring to the podcast, because I do feel like there is a lot of questions, a lot of misinformation, and just ultimately a big misunderstanding about what exactly quantum leaps are, what they include, what they entail, and the whole purpose behind them in our journey. And so today we're going to talk about all the things, and hopefully you're going to leave here today feeling not just inspired and understanding this concept a little bit more deeply, but also understanding how to navigate the challenges that might pop up in the midst of something like this happening in your reality. So let's dive in. So in my Substack publication, the line that I had wrote in there was that in order to quantum leap, there must be a quantum fall. And I'm going to explain to you exactly what this means and why this is applicable. But first, I want to walk it back just a little bit. So for anybody in my audience who maybe is not a spiritual woo-woo person, this is something that you can understand from a scientific perspective and is actually rooted in science itself. So if you're not familiar with this, basically what a quantum leap is it refers to the electron of an atom and how it can move from one energy space very rapidly to the next energy level at a pace that feels like it hasn't crossed the space in between, but simply vanished and reappeared at that higher energy level. And this is something as energetic beings we have applied to our lives in terms of when we have a very sudden big change that occurs in our lives or a very big step that happens that feels like it shifts us from one way of being to a completely different reality. This is what we refer to as a quantum leap. Now, the idea behind this is that we are skipping steps. We're skipping something in between where we were to where we now find ourselves in our reality. And I know, speaking to myself in my journey, quantum leaps are something that I have experienced time and time again. I am very good at recognizing when these quantum leaps are occurring for me in my life, and even to the point where I can actually predict them about to occur. Now, I'm going to guess for you, somebody in this audience who's listening to a mental wellness podcast, who's working on themselves, healing, growth, etc., you have likely experienced a lot of quantum leaps in your life too, whether or not you consciously understand what those are. But hopefully after today, again, you'll be able to recognize, hey, I actually have went through this, and this is my experience and how I was able to navigate it, and or how to approach this a little bit differently in the future. So for me, when I came home from our trip abroad from February to May, we were traveling across Asia. We were in Thailand, Laos, and Bali. I was living a completely different reality than I have in a really long time, or perhaps even ever. I was thoroughly enjoying my life, being able to be fully in control of my schedule, not having a lot of calls, being very flexible, a lot of self-care, basically just enjoying my time traveling and not worrying about finances or being tied to a bottom dollar in any way, shape, or form. And so I got really accustomed to living life in this new way. And upon returning home, I was feeling very inspired, very motivated, very ready for what I was going to create in my business moving forward and what I wanted it to look like, feel like, all the things. And so as soon as we got home, I hit the ground running and I felt like I was doing all the things and I was seeing all the responses or all the results that I was hopeful for in my life. And I thought, man, this is it. Things are happening, things are really moving, it feels really great. And so I did what most of us do in this time period is I buckled down harder. And lo and behold, I got a change, but it wasn't exactly the change that you would think. And in fact, I actually struggled immensely for the last couple of weeks / couple of months because it was as if everything in my reality suddenly hit a wall and dried up. All of the things that were happening on the end of my writing, it felt like subscribers were slowing down. It felt like I was really struggling to get my work out there. A lot of people weren't reading or commenting or engaging with it. And it was really frustrating in a really big way. And so I started to go down this downward spiral, moving into like a comparison loop and really dragging myself through the mud. And it took me a little bit of time to pull myself out of this and realize that I had landed in what was the quantum fall of a quantum leap. And it was within my power to be able to pull myself out of that, move forward, and get to the place that I wanted to be at. But I had to do the work. And so, what a quantum fault is, and what I mentioned in this latest article, is in relation to what happens when we've skipped steps. We've went from here to there in terms of our internal standpoint, and suddenly things in our reality have to play catch up to match. What I want you to picture this as a really easy example of is anybody who has been classified as, like, say, a genius level in school at a very young age, and they've been moved from, say, grade 4 to like grade 8 or grade 9, and they skipped all of those fundamental years in between. They might have the mental capacity, the mental know-how, the understanding, the IQ, the intellectual capability to be able to be at that higher level. But in those years in between, there were a lot of things that were missed. The opportunities to form social bonds, have those social connections, get good at being in social atmospheres, growing with your peers, doing sports, all the things. And so the skipping steps, although ultimately good and perhaps putting this individual ahead of the game later on in life, they have missed something fundamental that can be a consequence to where they're currently at and lead them to, at that new energetic level, struggling a little bit to feel comfortable, maybe feeling confused, maybe not feeling like they fit in quite particularly. And this can be precisely what it feels like inside of a quantum leap. So when these steps are skipped, when we move very rapidly from one reality to the next, what happens for us in terms of a quantum leap is our identity changing before our outer world has a chance to catch up. And when this occurs, we enter into what I call the quantum fall. Now, this is where things are shifting in terms of our reality in a way that we can't yet comprehend. It doesn't make sense. It might not feel good. It can be confusing and sometimes be filled with a lot of fucking challenges that make it really difficult for us to feel grounded and at ease in our lives. This period of what we can call a spiritual void, shit hitting the fan, of life lifing, just simply feels like everything in our life is falling apart. And oftentimes when this occurs for us, we start to second guess and question everything that's happening. We want to throw in the towel and give up and walk away. And we really do start to overanalyze and over question what we are doing and how we are doing it. However, in this period, this quantum fall that is occurring is actually the best sign for us because it does show us that we are on track and we are about to experience the quantum leap or currently experiencing the quantum leap We're just going through the motions of that outer world having to shift and pivot and realign to what is happening for us on that internal or energetic level. So, a couple of easy examples of what might happen in a quantum fall is you might suddenly notice that the environments that you're in, the people that you're hanging out with, or the things that you are currently engaging in no longer make sense for you. They don't feel good, they no longer fit. It feels like something's off. This could be your home living situation. It could be the job or career that you have, the business that you have. It could be the friends that you're surrounding yourself with, the relationship that you're in. There can be a lot of things that start to be questioned, feel like they're falling apart, or that you are letting them go or growing beyond them in this phase of the quantum fall to quantum leap. You might also notice that you have this really deep sense of restlessness within you where you're seeking something completely different than what you've been experiencing. So if your reality is constantly filled with noise and you're feeling like oftentimes there's too many people, too many social outings, etc., you might actually find yourself pulling back and isolating a little bit, where you're wanting to crave that quietness, that groundedness, and be able to get downloads or be connected to yourself, understand what you're going through, gain the clarity that you need to comprehend the situation, or even just seek comfort for yourself during this time. It's a way of really being able to soothe and just have your own back within this situation. You might also notice a lot of really big random emotions coming up, whether that be rage coming out of nowhere. I definitely experienced this in this last little bit. Or you might experience all of a sudden feeling like you're very teary or having a lot of emotions to just process and release. You might also start feeling homesick for the future, where you don't maybe know where you're going quite yet and you can't clearly see what this reality is going to look like, but you can feel so deep inside of your bones that something does not fit. Something is not right about the life that you're currently living. And you almost have this like inability to experience patience where it feels like you just have a lack of that and you're wanting to rush to get to the next thing, to hurry. Like it feels like you might be missing out or times escaping and you're losing out on the potential of what this reality is. These are all really big things that might shift for you in terms of that internal component in a quantum fall. And then there's also external things that can happen too, where it feels like things in your reality are falling apart very quickly because they no longer align for you. So, when we talked about kind of the internal changes of you potentially losing interest or recognizing that people or places no longer fit, in the external reality breakdown, this might be the opposite of where you don't necessarily recognize they don't fit, but it feels like things are being pulled away from you without your control. Where it feels like you are, quote unquote, losing friends, losing a job, losing a living situation. And it feels like things are happening outside of your actual decision making process. This is often what is occurring in a quantum leap because the things in your reality that are no longer for you are being stripped away so that you can get closer to the things that are actually in alignment with you. Another big thing that can happen right before the quantum leap in the midst of a quantum fall is old problems, old people, old whatever from the past resurfacing for a final time before you move into your new timeline or your new embodiment of whatever phase that might be. And last but not least is actually a good thing. You might experience some effortless alignment where something almost coincidental falls into place. It feels too good to be true, where something just fell into your lap and the dots connected and suddenly things are working out for you. This can also be a sign of you moving through the quantum fall to the quantum leap. And so each of these things are examples, ways that our reality can really shift and change as we start to go through the process of healing, growth, calling in something new, and shifting ourselves to be in a higher energetic level. Now, coming back to kind of my journey and my story, when I came home and I started to recognize that I was seeing things dry up and things were not shifting in the direction that I wanted to, and I kind of started to enter into a downward spiral, I started to get really curious about why things were coming up and why it felt so overwhelming, why it felt like so many things were against me. And I gotta tell you, it's hilarious when I really look back on it here in the last few weeks, because it's not even just like there was a couple of big things that felt like challenges or felt like they were falling apart. Literally everything in every area of my life was having problems or complications, from my relationships to my technology, Wi-Fi suddenly being the worst that it has ever been, certain things just not showing up, problems with deliveries, problem with communication. It was just insane how many things were lifing during this period. But when I scale it back even further to look at this trip abroad when we were in Asia and the life that I was living, I fully had stepped into the embodiment of the future me. I had fully stepped into the life that I was creating for myself. I actually got to live it out for 3 months, where I woke up every day, went to bed every day, and spent every single day in the energy of the version of me that I am striving to become, in the life that I am striving to have. I got to have 3 full months of experiencing that and letting myself be fully in that energetic state. And so, of course, when I'm here living and embodying this different energetic component, when I am living in this state and I'm calling in more, then of course I am going to experience the consequence of my reality having to alter to match that permanently moving forward. Because here's the thing, you guys. Hey, Reg Babe, have you heard the news? Go Regulate Yourself is coming to you live and in person. That's right, we have the first live podcast event happening in Edmonton, Alberta this September. Join us at the Orange Hub Theatre on September 25th with a live audience where we are interviewing 4 incredibly impactful speakers on what it takes to overcome shame, heal the hard stuff that you've been through in your life, and come out on top. Tickets are on sale right now, and until August 9th, you can grab our early bird pricing for a low rate of $54.99. You can get yours by heading to GoRegulateYourself.com and clicking the live event tab at the top of the screen. We cannot wait to see you there, and don't forget to go regulate yourself. We often don't talk about manifestation as being polar opposites, but it's something that we have to understand. There isn't just expansion in manifestation. There is expansion and contraction. We have light and dark. We have sun and moon. We have day and night. We have polar opposites in our reality for a reason, and contrast is important. The law of polarity is important to show us both ends of this coin. And so when we are wanting to experience an expansion, we must first have a contraction. It's like when you take in a deep breath. If you've taken in a deep breath and you're wanting to expand even further, you cannot continue to take in a breath. You first have to exhale in order to breathe in and expand even further. So the same thing is true for us in our lives. If we want to experience an expansion, some growth, something beautiful happening in our reality that has not happened up until this point, not to the extent of what we wish to call in, we have to understand that the consequence that is going to happen first is the fall. It is the contraction. It is the thing that is going to change, shift, or disappear in order for us to get realigned. Because we cannot build a new house on an old foundation. We cannot continue to call in things if we're holding stuff with both hands. We have to be willing to release, to let go, to surrender, to contract in order to expand, call in, receive, and get all of the things that we most desire. These two things have to go hand in hand. And so if we are experiencing a quantum leap, we have to understand that a quantum fall is going to come first and be an inevitable part of that. And hopefully that helps you look back on your life right now. If you're somebody at the beginning who's like, I'm not really sure if I've experienced a quantum leap before, which guaranteed you have. But if you haven't been able to really consciously call to mind some of those experiences, maybe instead of thinking about the sudden positive change, you can think about the sudden consequences when everything in life felt like it was going wrong, and be able to pinpoint those moments when potentially there was a quantum leap associated with that, and you did experience something really big and beautiful. And so this is a really core component behind a quantum leap. It is something that you have to keep in mind when you're moving down this journey. Now, something else that I wanted to talk about today in relation to this that I think might trigger some people is the idea of needing rituals or certain practices to experience a quantum leap or to work with the energy of manifestation. And I'm going to call a big old fat bullshit on this one, okay? With this last portal that's happened with the Lionsgate, you've probably seen all over Instagram, at least I know that I have, that there's been a lot of rituals around Lionsgate. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a good woo-woo practice. I love to engage in a lot of these spiritual rituals or practices and have fun with them, especially to get oriented to my goals or to embody energy and get into this space where I do feel more aligned with what it is that I am working towards. However, and this is a really big however of where this bullshit comes into play, you do not require the rituals in order to receive, in order to move into a quantum leap. And in fact, I would actually argue that these likely don't have much of an impact in relation to what you are doing in your own life. And the reason being is because practices are great, rituals are great, all of these things that help you feel more aligned are fantastic, but they do not replace doing the work. And in order for you to be moving in the direction of a quantum leap and manifestation, law of attraction, all of these great things, you have to be doing the work. You cannot get around it. You cannot avoid it. You cannot ignore it. The work is required in order for you to see change. This is why if you were just to decide right now that you wanted a blue elephant, it's not just going to appear in your reality and show up for you in your lap. Whatever you are desiring and what you want to work towards, you have to be putting in the aligned and inspired action towards. And so let's break this down a little bit. What is inspired action? Inspired action is the things that you feel inspired to do to move towards the goals that you've set. So let's say that you've set a goal to do something in your business. Maybe you want to open a shop, maybe you want to make a new offer, maybe you just want to get a business started. Well, it's not just going to suddenly appear in front of you and be running 24/7 without you needing to do anything. Obviously, there's going to be some work required. You're going to have to come up with a business concept and write it out and maybe start a social media page or get it out in front of people if it's a specific offer. If it's a physical shop, you're going to have to rent a space and hire staff and get product, all of these great things. And so what the inspired action is once you have decided for yourself what it is that you want to call in, what it is that you want to achieve or work towards, the inspired action is the steps that you feel inspired to take in relation to that goal and moving in that direction. And inspired really comes from the idea that sometimes these will be downloads that we receive that are little nudges or little moments of clarity that we think about certain things that could potentially give us more results or get us to our goal quicker or be something that could really work for us in our favor. And other times, these are just tangible, actual steps that we know we need to take in order to achieve something. But the work, as I said, is something that is non-negotiable. This is something that we have to do to move towards that goal. So when I was experiencing my little spiral here in the last couple of months where I came home and I went into a quantum fall and it felt like everything was going wrong, what was the first thing that I as a human being did? I stopped doing the work, you guys. I stopped writing. I took a break. I was dragging my feet. I procrastinated so hard. I sabotaged in so many ways. Instead of me just doing the work and continuing to be consistent, I dug myself into a further hole and prevented myself from entering into the leap because I was not doing the action required in order to keep moving in the direction that I wanted to go. And this is where so many of us get caught up. When we enter into the fall, we put up our feet, we decide, oh, it wasn't meant to be. We try to retreat back to the old identity, desperately clinging to what was, even though that no longer exists, it's no longer present, and we can no longer retreat back to that. And so now we end up in this void, this place of not making any changes, not making any movement, feeling very confused, turned around, lost in the dark. And sometimes some of us can stay here for years and years and years without doing anything different because we just simply stopped doing the work. And so the biggest thing for us is to recognize when we are in a quantum fall and to recognize that we need to continue to take the action in order to move out of that and move into the leap phase. And of course, this is easier said than done. If you're anything like me, you're probably going to go into a spiral for a little bit before you pull yourself out of that, give yourself a good shake, and recognize what you're doing. But eventually you will. And when you do, every single time that this happens, you're going to get better at getting yourself through this a little bit quicker so that the fall isn't as impactful, doesn't last as long, or isn't as devastating as what it would normally be because you're able to recognize where you're at, where you want to go, and take those actual steps in between those two things. And so right now, I want to end this episode by bringing you back to yourself and where you're at right now in your life. Whether you think that you're in the middle of a quantum fall or a quantum leap, or you're potentially working your way up to a new identity level and you know that it's inevitable that it's going to come, let's just zone in on you a little bit right now. So think about the results that you have in your life and ask yourself right now, are you where you want to be? And if the answer is anything but a yes, then you're going to want to ask yourself, why? Why am I not where I want to be? Because again, remember, this comes down to the work. So potentially, you're not putting in the work in the area that you need to. You're not taking action as you should be. Perhaps the things that you say are a priority actually aren't because you're not doing anything to make those things a priority. Maybe there are certain steps that you are not taking in your life, certain decisions that you are not making. This is going to come back to you being the problem, but you also being the solution. We are the biggest common denominator in all of our problems, and we have the ability to shift and change how we're showing up in every moment of every day. And the results that we get in our lives are directly because of the action that we are putting in. The results that we get in our life are because of us and us alone. And so if you do not currently have the results that you desire, you want to ask yourself why and start to make changes in those particular areas. Quantum leaps are something really beautiful that happens for us and can happen for us quite regularly as we are healing and growing and doing all of this work. But in order for us to not get trapped in the quantum fall, for us to not get trapped in the void and stuck there for the rest of our lives, we have to do the work. And the work is you simply showing up, taking action, doing whatever feels aligned for you to move in the direction that you want to go. This is all that is required. Now, I hope that this helps you understand a little bit more clearly what a quantum leap actually is, how it shows up in our lives, what it involves, and helps you navigate it a little bit more easily should it pop up for you in the future, or perhaps if you're navigating it right now. Either way, I am sending you so much love. I would love to know if you have any questions on today's episode. Feel free to drop below, leave them in the comments section. and I will catch you in the next episode. Remember to go regulate yourself. Mwah. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Go Regulate Yourself podcast. If you felt called out in the best way, I would be so honored if you drop below and leave a review or share this with a friend who needs to hear it too. And remember, regulate yourself before you wreck yourself. I'll catch you in the next episode. Mwah.